Well, that was real good, isn't it?
Hello, and welcome to the PriceWriters podcast with Catrin and me, Jeremy Keating. Join us as we explore and discuss the world of insurance-related books, offering our insight and recommendations. This week, we're just going to say it like it is, but there is a little bit of parental guidance around the name of this book. So if you listen to the podcast with little ears around, firstly, congratulations, you do definitely win at parenting. But secondly, we'll be using some unusually strong language today. So quite the intro, Catrin. What is the book we're reading?
This week, we're talking about Bullshit Jobs by David Graeber. And David talks about 5 different kinds of bullshit jobs. So there are the duct tapers. These are people hired to fix problems that shouldn't really exist in the first place. Then there are flunkies, which is one of my favorite words. I didn't even realize, but I love this word, flunkies. These are roles that exist purely to make someone else look or feel important. And I know that in my career, I've seen people who I'm like, you're just trying to accumulate people just for the sake of having people, right? You don't actually have something to do. So that's a flunky. Then there are goons, another very strong and slightly villainous word. I feel like a villain has a goon, but there you go. Apparently this is a bullshit job as well. These are jobs that only exist because other people have them. And he gives some examples like telemarketers, but also some people who just want someone so that people who come into the office go, God, this must be an important office because you have that set up, you know? That would be a goon. The 4th type is a bulk ticker. Hope some people didn't feel too called out then. But these are roles that create the appearance of progress, compliance, or action, but without actually producing anything meaningful. And then he also talks the 5th kind, which are taskmasters. And these are people who either supervise people who don't need supervising, they're just additional management for the sake of it, or well, that was real good, isn't it? Or taskmasters can also be managers who create unnecessary work to justify their own role.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. I'm running mentally through lists of people who I may or may not have worked hypothetically within the past and fitting them into some boxes here. So, but what's the overall concept of the book?
The concept is that why do these bullshit jobs exist when capitalism kind of suggests that they shouldn't? And a lot of companies like to think they're efficient and lean and all the rest of it. So why do so many people? And he says, look, about 35 to 40% of people say they themselves have a bullshit job.
Okay.
Wow. And he's like, why do so many people feel that their job is totally meaningless and vacuous?
Do we think pricing professional can ever fit into this category?
Okay, so I don't think being a pricing professional is a bullshit job.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely not. And I don't think David Graeber does either. He mentions actuaries in the first chapter as an example of a non-bullshit job. And he also mentions catastrophe risk analysts in a later chapter. It's slightly random, but love it. And again, not a bullshit job. So that's the good news. But Jeremy, do you think that, maybe there's an accusation in there that potentially, I mean, the one that really jumped out for me in pricing was that we do tend to fix things that actually should be potentially properly fixed by an expert data engineer or whatever. We're often given issues and said, can you fix this? And we go, yeah, sure. Like, we're good to go. Is that just an example of us being duct tapers? So do you think there's an aspect of that in our job?
I think we do end up fixing problems that shouldn't exist, but they often exist because it's quite hard to get them fixed any other way. If you imagine the trade-off between actually getting IT to fix something and just doing it ourselves, it's often more work to get IT to fix it. And the reason the problems exist in the first place is because people didn't actually envisage the work we'd be doing when these systems went live. So I think actually it's not in that realm. However, I can think of quite a few times where, hypothetically, imagine you've worked in pricing for a couple of years in a large insurer, And then you discover that there's a head of pricing at group level that has no one that works for them at all, that's never interacted with anyone from your pricing department. And you're just like, what do they do all day? So I think occasionally I can think of some times where there have been jobs where I've wondered what people did. I would defend that though, because I did go and work at group level and discover that actually a lot of very important, useful work goes on at group level. That said, I would say that there's sometimes a veering towards box ticking. I think sometimes group feels that they need to discover what's going on in the pricing team. And in order to and they can't just go and talk to you for a bit, they have to make a 200-line questionnaire to send to you that then takes you a couple of weeks to fill in. So I think possibly there is a bit of going towards box ticking. What do you think?
Yeah, I see box ticking aspects in our job, particularly around governance. And sometimes that we have governance processes that are old or that don't really match the situation. I know I've filled out governance tick lists that say you've spoken to this team, and I go, oh, who are those team? Oh yeah, we got rid of that team like ages ago in the last restructure. Okay. So what should I do? Yeah, tick the box, Or for example, people on the committee of whatever governance committee we're talking about who haven't properly looked at the pre-reading or the information or this proposal before right now.
Yeah.
But we have to have a committee to say that everyone has, even though we haven't. And you think, well, how effective are their challenges going to be if they've literally only had 3-minute introduction, the 2 slides that I've shown them about this project? Like, how effective and deep can that challenge really get in a 10-minute committee slot? Or when you've got people on the committee who don't know the detail of this method, they don't know how to govern this method, but for whatever reason, oh, that person is always on the committee, so you have to make sure you've talked to him. So I definitely think that when we do governance processes, we do tend towards box ticking. Now, some of that is absolutely understandable. It's really important that you have a checklist that you can say, yeah, I have asked all of these questions, and you've got a record of that. But I think sometimes the questions that we ask ourselves are so generic or inappropriate to the situation to be virtually meaningless. And I think the real problem in insurance pricing about box ticking is that we feel, because we've ticked all the boxes, that we've done governance.
Yeah.
And actually, it stops us from doing any further governance. If we didn't have the checklist at all and someone said, right, let's really properly challenge or review this model, we might actually end up with more rigorous challenge, because if you see a whole page of ticks, you're like, well, this is done. This is fine. And so I think sometimes it's not necessarily that all governance is bullshit. It's absolutely, that's true. But I think that sometimes the way that we go about it can turn it into a very hoop jumping kind of bullshit activity within our actually very important, meaningful work. And not only is that a problem because it's a waste of time, but it actually distracts us from the more valuable aspects of our job. If we're being real on this podcast today, what is the most bullshit task that you personally have ever done in insurance? And why did it exist? Why was this even something you had to do?
I think there are a few that jump to mind, actually. Some of this is just an effect of working for a big company, but I suppose that's the point with a lot of these bullshit jobs. They exist in big companies. There are quite a few tasks I can think of, but a particular one is that the employee engagement survey had asked all of us, would you buy our insurance products? And a lot of people had ticked no, which was obviously considered a problem at higher levels. And a really big committee was set up to investigate why this was and what we could do about it. It was a lot of people, so I was part of it. There was probably 20 or 30 people. We met regularly to discuss it. Now, that's a big group to have a discussion with for a start, but there's a lot of money in that room being spent on salaries for people to meet up. And I couldn't work out why, because it wasn't like the first time we'd had this issue. I couldn't work it out. So I talked privately to a couple of people about why are we actually having this committee? And it turned out the finance director's bonus was linked to this question. And because they'd had a bad view on it, they were getting a lower bonus and they didn't want the same thing next year. So please could we turn that question around? So we met repeatedly on this, but the actual problem was never really defined. We never reached a stage where we were like, this is the problem, so we could come up with some actions. I think we ended up putting in some extra discounts for staff, but I'm sure a lot of people know that actually staff had the worst loss ratios going. So financially, it was not a good thing to do. It was not good for the company. And to be honest, the staff weren't that interested in buying that products from us because we all know that we may as well just go on the aggregator and get the cheapest one going. It just didn't help. It was a lot of money spent on producing an outcome that wasn't useful for anyone.
I think the engagement surveys can be a real source of these things. The other one that gets me is the question that's like, do you feel that last time's survey was sufficiently discussed and followed up? So you end up with meetings where we're all saying, we did follow up. If this is us and we're following up, are you all aware that we are following up? We're all aware that this is what we're doing. Okay, are we actually going to do something to make it better? No, we're going to push that into the long grass, but we are following up. And so even next year when nothing has changed at all, when you answer that question, you're kind of like, well, they did follow up. So I'm going to have to score it quite highly, but nothing changed. So I agree with you. I think these we're doing an engagement form not to surface the real reasons, but for some kind of performance or benefit distribution that most people aren't aware of.
Yeah, it's like, can we change that KPI? Not can we deal with the actual issue? Can we work out why employees who work here don't like our products? No, no, no. Let's just try and get a higher percentage score on that particular statistic next year, please. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a few bullshit tasks that kind of relate to that kind of thing. Then the other thing is some committee, I mean, just even the word committee just like fills most people with dread. But sometimes committees are set up at maybe grassroots level or a group of people who actually really want to do something meaningful and valuable. But for whatever reason, they actually don't have the levers to make proper and lasting change. I used to be the lead of a sustainability employee network. And it was set up by a group of people who wanted to make the office more sustainable. And some of the things that we did, I would say were really meaningful and absolutely not bullshit.
Yeah.
Things like actually matching the signage on recycling bins to the items that we had to recycle. This is like my pet peeve just generally in life. But I hate it when the recycling bins, you're at a cafe or coffee shop and the bins aren't labeled with where you should put your coffee cup. And you're like, well, I don't know. Is it plastic? I don't know. Is it cardboard? Is it general waste? Like, what is that? So we went through with someone from property services and said, okay, this box that we get from the canteen, where should it be recycled? Let's put literally a picture of the canteen boxes on the labels. Just a thing like that, which actually I do think are valuable to do. It shouldn't have taken so many people's involvement to get that to happen, but it did happen. Okay, some things are hard, I get it. But there was a lot of tasks, and particularly later as the network became bigger and more sponsored by the company itself, that we ended up talking about issues which we really didn't have the power to solve. Things like talking about assessing carbon emissions for all of our policyholders. Well, yeah, it'd be a good thing to do, but a group of people doing that side of desks, really not the right way to implement that. We were much better off sticking with set up a battery recycling point in the lobby and let signpost people to the local repair cafe and the local refill stores. But there was a big part of the committee that ended up kind of being bullshit, super wasted time because we were given these actions or things to discuss, but without the empowerment to actually resolve them. If you're not realistic about how they're going to be supported or how their ideas are going to translate to action, that is a way that people get kind of discouraged by these things. So I do think that there is an element where bullshit tasks can creep into things that even start as something very worthy. But how can we as leaders create environments where people can just turn around and say, this work doesn't matter, or we suddenly veered into pie in the sky bullshit. How do we get that atmosphere without stepping on someone's toes or without an atmosphere of fear?
Now, I'm going to say something really controversial here. I'm actually quite sure you're not going to be happy with it. Quite a few people listening aren't going to be happy. When you work for a big company, sometimes you get asked to do a bullshit task by people that are senior and stuff, and you may as well just laugh it and do it. Sorry, I know it's not a very good answer. And I know that you end up having to go to your team and they turn around and tell you this is bullshit and you can't really agree with them, even though you do. And you're like, no, it's super important piece of work
Yeah.
that you're asked to fill in a questionnaire by. Agree, just do it. Just lump it this time. Don't spend a lot of time on it. Like say, have a bullshit detector, but often probably just do the work. Sorry.
I guess that's honest, right? And that's what most people currently do.
Yeah.
My feeling would be ask genuinely, what is the point of this task? What is the outcome that we're trying to get to? Because if the answer is, oh, we're trying to, well, basically, we're just trying to improve the finance
Director's
director's bonus.
bonus. Yes.
All right. Okay. So, no, guys, we can all save ourselves a significant amount of time if we just agree to vote highly on it next year. All right. At least then we know, The thing is, it's really difficult, particularly in big organizations, because it's really hard to know just because it's low value for you, it might actually be
Yeah.
high value or useful for someone else. So it is difficult to know.
I think there's a flip side of the coin because genuinely, when I worked in Greek, I discovered that actually a lot of the work done in Greek is important. There is bullshit, don't get me wrong, but actually quite a lot of the stuff is important.
Hmm. Okay. But what is one practical change that a pricing team could make this quarter to reduce the amount of bullshit tasks they've got?
I would say if everyone tried not to create bullshit, then the system would be better. I do think having just a bullshit detector and actually thinking to yourself when you give work out, is this actually useful? Is this going to be effective? We talked about governance earlier. Sometimes people end up in tick boxy stuff just because it's hard to change things. So actually keeping stuff up to date. When you put on a governance checklist and it's going to be reviewed annually, actually review it annually because that's not the bullshit bit. The bullshit bit is filling it in when it's 3 years out of date. So if you just tick every year to say I've reviewed it and you never actually update it, then that's creating bullshit. So actually doing the stuff that you're meant to do on the review cycles, I would say is probably my tip for avoiding bullshit. And it's weird because a lot of people probably think, oh, but doing the reviews is bullshit. But I disagree with that. I think just ticking stuff off when it's out of date is bullshit.
Mm. Well, it's literally box ticking, isn't it?
Yeah,
According to
exactly.
David Graeber's thing. I've got two things, I guess. One is we're talking about being a duct taper earlier, fixing an issue to cover up for someone upstream not doing a thing that they're meant to be doing. And let's be honest, we're not the best people to be trying to fix our data warehouses and stuff. You really should get a data engineer, for example. So one thing that teams in that position can do is to agree for a set period, maybe it's 4 to 6 weeks. It doesn't have to be long, but every time that you get one of these issues and you think, oh, I could just kind of duct tape it myself and okay. Or, oh, I have to raise a ticket with IT and oh, that's a pain. Yeah, it is. But otherwise, how are IT going to know to fix it? And also, more widely than that, why are your team having to use your resources to fix something that another team supposedly do have resource to do? If genuinely they have too much on and they can't do all of their tasks, then you kind of artificially hiding some is not going to give them the leverage they need to ask for more resource. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a lose-lose when we duct tape like that, as well as the obvious problems of creating technical debt and the risk of errors. So I think first thing you can do is do an IT ticket binge for a short period of time, 1 month or kind of 6 weeks, something is fine. I think the other thing is to really think about our admin. We don't have lots of admin. We're quite fortunate in pricing, but I do see a lot of teams spending 15 minutes, 30 minutes a week, maybe more, particularly more for managers, faffing about with whatever ticket management tasks allocation system you have and moving tickets around and all those kind of things, do we really feel like that's adding value? Like the purpose of that task, surely, is to update the manager on what is in the backlog, what is in progress, what is blocked, what is now complete. It's just a prompt for those headings. What new has come into our inbox? What are we working on? What can I help you with? And what can we tick off? And I think other than that, what is the purpose? If it's for visibility for senior managers, is there a better way of doing it? I would almost always, if it involves raising some kind of ticket thing, I would usually say there is. I used to do all of my planning and that kind of stuff on Excel because I always have Excel open.
That's what I would do. Yeah, I put my Kanban boards in Excel. I mean, you don't need special software. You just need 3 columns that are coloured in, don't you? Have you ever heard the phrase write-only documents? You never read it, you just write it. Yeah, I think there's elements of that goes on, definitely. Yeah, especially in the admin. Let's move the tickets forward. Let's log what we did and stuff where it's like no one's ever actually going to read that.
Yeah, I think that if you have an extra system, all it does is it logs your tasks, then realistically, you're never going to actually look at it. So even on like the Microsoft to-do list, I don't use it because it's not something I automatically have open all the time. Honestly, if you can do it in Excel, like do it on SharePoint, so everyone, and also that everyone has access to the same document. Everyone in your team knows how to use Excel. So allowing people their own, it's like freedom to put stuff on there saves the manager time. It's so much quicker to do anything in Excel because we're already good at it. I always think that going back to almost the first principle of, sorry, who is this for and what do they actually need to know from it is so much more important than using, whether it's a Jira board or Slack or anything like that. I mean, speaking to someone recently who said, yeah, according to our Jira board, all of our tasks are completed at 9:29 on a Monday morning, 1 minute before their weekly prioritization meeting. That's just that's not giving you data. That is just
that's fishing a box, isn't it? Yeah. I found Taskmaster an interesting one because I can think of times where we've had project managers who have actually been really good and have driven the project forward, done really useful organization, so on. I can also think of times where we've had project managers who have just done a weekly project meeting with us, basically asked people if they've done stuff, ticked it or marked it amber, and just been really, frankly, unhelpful. Somebody at the center of stuff, keeping stuff so it's in order. And then if something's going to be late, communicating it to people. This is useful stuff. But I can also think of people who have genuinely just been really taskmastery and just been like, right, tick or amber, and then just stuck it in a report and stuff. And we end up running late. And so I can see that as being a real bullshit job. Yeah.
All right. So overall, I did quite enjoy this book. It's very long. It's like 11 hours on Audible, which felt like a really long time. Yeah. I felt like it was a book of 2 halves. So the first half was all about describing the bullshit job, also describing the psychological aspect of having a bullshit job, how it makes you feel, what it does to your mental health, what it does to your sense of value as a person. Which I thought was interesting. The second half was much more about work more widely. How would we get rid of all these bullshit jobs? Is that a good thing to do? Why have we not done that already? And if we did get rid of all the bullshit jobs, what would that 40% of the population do instead? And how do we create that as a situation? Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing or something else?
It reminds me a bit of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, actually, where there's a race called the Golden Fringians who decide to effectively get rid of their middle class people, the people they feel they actually do stuff. So it's the hairdressers and strategy consultants and telephone sanitizers. And in fact, they end up dying of a plague caused by having got rid of these people. So a little element of me does wonder, because we do live in a capitalist society and companies do want to make a profit. So we talked about flunkies being a bullshit job. And I agree with you that it's bullshit. But then on the reverse of that, it means that company retains someone who's actually really good at their job. Is that a small price to pay for that. So actually, are there sort of secondary capitalist forces going on that create these things? And it is in some ways useful. I'm just putting that out there as a counterpoint to the book.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of came away thinking, gosh, there probably is a lot of work that we could get rid of. And I think the goons category kind of fits this a lot. So jobs that only exist because other people have other jobs. So, for example, if a government department set a new rule that said companies have got to submit this report, blah, 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 making that and enforcing it and checking it, it's not actually getting to the outcome, the really meaningful outcome that we want. And there's lots of studies that show that kind of industry regulation doesn't always get you to the outcome you want. But not only is that job kind of bullshit, but also then the company, the insurers have to have some goons who are maybe in the, I don't know, regulatory reporting team or the external governance reviewer, I don't know, whatever the team might be called, but the insurers will have to have some jobs that exist only because the government or the regulator has other people who are doing a bullshit job. And the goons are kind of fending off the bullshit from that other external source. So again, I do actually think that there are groups, almost like seams of work that you think, yeah, actually, if we just organize this a bit better, then we could get rid of a whole seam of bullshit. I mean, the book ends wildly, like wildly out, really far out
Do we
there.
send the middle classes off into space?
Yeah, it kind of ends on a slightly odd note where he kind of says, obviously people in healthcare like caring responsibilities will have to still work. They will receive universal basic income, but obviously they'll still have to work 40 hours a week, like doctors and nurses and teachers and carers and waste management people, all these kind of important jobs. They still need to work. And the book kind of ends on saying, yeah, they still would work even with universal basic income. I didn't quite follow the logic on how do you convince someone to spend 40 hours of their week being paid minimum wage, caring for someone. It's very difficult. It's a very mentally and physically taxing job at the same time as everyone getting universal basic income to live on. I found that argument kind of tough to follow. But like I say, the first bit of this book was really good. I kind of wish they'd stopped at 6 hours. So I do fully recommend it.
All right. Okay, well, thank you very much, Catrin. That's a very interesting take on Bullshit Jobs by David Graeber.
We'll be back next time with some more PD language. I'm very sorry.
Thanks ever so much for joining us and looking forward to seeing you all next time. PriceWriters transforms pricing professionals into the most respected leaders in insurance. Find out more about our capability audits by visiting PriceWriters.com.